All right, today we're going to dive into something pretty incredible. And honestly, it's something that's been overlooked for way too long. We're talking about the link between what's happening in your head and what's going on in your gut. It's this powerful connection that is literally reshaping how we think about our health. And it all starts with a story that is just frustratingly common. Let's talk about a patient named Jennifer. She was dealing with debilitating belly pain, a ton of anxiety, and depression. But here's the thing. After all the tests, all the checkups, doctors just couldn't find anything physically wrong. They basically suggested the problem was all in her head.
And this just begs the question, right? What if the symptoms that millions of people are feeling aren't just in their heads? What if they're actually part of a really complex conversation between the brain and the gut, a conversation that's just gone completely haywire?
To really get this, we kind of have to zoom out and see why modern medicine is struggling so much right now. We're seeing this massive, and I mean massive, rise in chronic illnesses, things like obesity, autoimmune disorders, mental health conditions, and they just don't fit the old ways of thinking. See, for the longest time, we've looked at the human body like it's a car, a machine. A part breaks, you take it to a specialist, they fix it or replace it. Simple. But that model, it's failing us. The new reality, the one we're starting to understand now, is that the body is an ecosystem. It's this complex, interconnected web where the brain, the gut, and everything in between are constantly talking to and influencing each other.
Let me put this into perspective for you. Let's go back to 1972. Back then, the obesity rate in the United States was 13%. Now, that's still a serious issue for sure, but it was, relatively contained. Okay, now fast forward to 2012. That rate has skyrocketed to 35%. And this explosion, it's not just about weight. It is a symptom of a much, much larger breakdown in our collective health. A breakdown that old body is a machine model, well, it just can't explain it.
So let's get into the science of it all. The first huge piece of this puzzle is this incredibly powerful two-way communication system that, honestly, we're only just now beginning to fully appreciate.
It's called the brain-gut axis. And the best way to think about it is like an information superhighway, packed with nerves and chemical signals. Your brain is constantly talking to your gut, but, and this is the part we often miss, your gut is constantly sending information right back up to your brain. It's influencing everything from your mood to the decisions you make.
Want to see this axis in action? Think about this. Some driver cuts you off in traffic. Instantly, your brain sends out this cascade of stress signals. Your muscles get tight, your jaw clenches, and your gut immediately reacts. It literally changes how it's working. That is a perfect, everyday example of how a single thought creates a very real, physical response in your body.
But here's where it gets even more interesting. This superhighway, it isn't just a two-way street. There's another major player in this conversation, a player that actually outnumbers our own human cells 10 to 1.
We are talking about the trillions of tiny microbes living in your gut, your microbiome. For years, we figured they just helped us digest our lunch, but what we now know is that they are like these little chemical factories, constantly producing compounds that directly influence the signals traveling up and down that brain-gut axis. They aren't just sitting there, they are listening in, and they are talking back.
And get this, not all of these microbes are created equal. Just like in an outdoor ecosystem like wolves in Yellowstone, your gut has what are called keystone species. These are the really crucial bacteria. If they disappear, the whole ecosystem can become unstable, and that affects all the other microbes that rely on them.
So, we have this incredibly intelligent, interconnected system. What goes wrong? Why are so many of us, like Jennifer from the beginning, suffering from all the symptoms of a system in total distress?
Well, the evidence is really starting to point to two main culprits that can basically program this entire system for dysfunction, and a lot of times it starts from the very beginning of our lives.
The first one is early life stress. There are landmark studies on what are called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, and they show this direct, powerful link. The more trauma a child experiences, the higher their risk for chronic health problems when they become an adult. That early stress can fundamentally and permanently alter the programming of that brain-gut axis.
And the second culprit? Our modern diet. So researchers studied the indigenous Yanomami people and found that their guts have this staggering microbial diversity. Why? Because their diet is packed with fiber and all kinds of whole foods. Now, contrast that with the typical North American diet. It's basically a constant assault on our gut microbes, starving the good ones and feeding the bad.
So here's the really crucial takeaway. You combine a system that's been programmed by stress with a diet that's actively damaging the gut, and what you get is the perfect storm for chronic, low-grade inflammation.
And this inflammation is now understood to be a root cause of so many modern diseases, from heart disease all the way to depression.
But, and this is really important, this is not a life sentence. The most important part of this whole story is that we can absolutely take back control. So let's look at how.
This quote really introduces a powerful new way of thinking. We are not just passive victims of our genes or our past. As Dr. Emmerin Mayer puts it, we can become the engineers of our very own internal ecosystem.
So, how do we actually become these engineers? Well, the research points to a few key things we can all do. First, you've got to feed your gut microbes what they need. That means a diverse diet that's super rich in plants and fiber. Second, cut down on the foods that fuel that inflammation, like processed foods and too much animal fat. Third, you have to actively manage your stress through things like meditation. And finally, get regular exercise. We know it's good for the brain, and if it's good for the brain, it's good for the whole system.
What this all means is that we really need to stop looking at chronic illness like it's a single broken part in a machine. Instead, we have to start seeing it for what it is, a sign that our internal ecosystem is out of balance. And you know what the good news is? An ecosystem can be nurtured back to health.
And that brings us right back to where we started. You know, that gut feeling isn't just some random sensation. It's communication. It's your second brain and your entire microbiome sending you vital information about your health. So the only question left is, are you ready to listen?